actually what it's reminding me, and where I wish to go now in the conversation, is to Adam Smith's The Theory of Moral Sentiments, because I think he speaks precisely to this issue. He talks about, and actually I think the theory of moral sentiments, I don't think you can properly understand The Wealth of Nations without properly understanding the theory of moral sentiments, because I think he grapples with this issue of selfishness and what we are as individuals. And I think, as you're talking about, the problems that, more collectivist inclined people have with individualism, I think Adam Smith deals very, very well with this problem in the theory of moral sentiments. I'm not sure if you share that sentiment.
I absolutely do. When I studied Smith many years ago, I read the literature which was called in German Das Adam Smith Problem. So it's this idea that somehow there's a problem between the theory of moral sentiments and the Wealth of Nations, that somehow when he was still this professor of moral philosophy, he wrote a book that is socially attractive, that's the theory of moral sentiments. But then 20 years later, when he writes the theory, the Wealth of Nations, he somehow turned into an economist, and now he's an atomistic individualist who believes that we don't rely on the goodwill of the baker to give us bread, or the goodwill of the candle maker, but somehow this invisible hand will do the trick for us. And I strongly believe that's a misreading of Smith. I don't. He's the same guy, and he actually meant to write both books as a complement to each other. And if you want to read the modern interpreters of him, Russ Roberts is an outstanding example. Deirdre McCloskey is another outstanding example. In both of those cases, you'll see the persuasive unpacking of Smith to demonstrate the ethical character of the market order. So when he says we don't rely on the goodwill of the baker, he's not saying we don't rely on the morality of the baker. He just says the baker doesn't actually have to stand up and say, I'm going to bake a bread for Phila today and for Stan, and I can make a list of everybody that needs. He doesn't have to do that. But what he certainly cares about is he cares about the quality of service and interaction he has with you, because he needs you to come back tomorrow to buy bread again. So it's immensely important, the human interaction between the two of us. He says it beautifully in the theory of moral sentiments. Smith says we strive not only to be loved, but to be lovely. And lovely in 18th century English isn't what we mean. It's not an aesthetic point. It means morally attractive.
Yeah, and maybe just to extend that, because I've got the full quote here.
Yeah,
he says, man naturally desires not only to be loved, but to be lovely, or to be that which is the natural and proper object of love. He naturally dreads not only to be hated, but to be hateful, or to be that which is the natural and proper object of hatred. He desires not only praise, but praiseworthiness, or to be that which, though it should be praised by nobody, is however the natural and proper object of praise. He dreads not only blame, but blameworthiness, or to be that which is, though should not be blamed by anybody, is however the natural and proper object of blame. And I think he just puts it so beautifully.
It's amazing, Phila. We didn't, by the way, coordinate these quotes all the time, but they left the same impression on us. It's the central point to understand. It's when you understand the market order, the emergent market order, the role that competition, and for competition, I've learned to use a different word, because economists don't mind competition, but lots of others in society think competition means I'm trying to kind of beat you down. Competition in economics means mutual accommodation. It means I respond to you. It means I take you into account. Now, if you're my direct competitor, I take into account the quality of your product, the price of your product, and so on. If you're my customer, I take you into account in a very different way, because I need to persuade you to buy my service or my goods. So mutual accommodation is for me, it's like a useful modern way of rephrasing the work of what Smith calls the invisible hand. We are guided by these forces of mutual accommodation, and that's it's not amoral even. It is in fact a virtuous force within society. It is pro-ethical to be encouraged to take other people into account in your decisions.
And I think you do a fantastic job in dealing with the external forces, or what I will call for the meantime the forces of the marketplace. But I think what he also crucially deals with in the theory of moral sentiments are the internal forces that are working in us, which he very brilliantly calls the inhabitant of the breast, or the impartial spectator. And each one of us, of course, has these within us. And I think any argument that seeks to criticize the individual must at first grapple with that, inhabitant of the breast, which he says has the passion or has the ability to calm the most presumptuous of our pleasures, in that brilliant passage in The Theory of Moral Sentiments, which I cannot, even if I wanted to, wish to quote from the book. I can't, I won't do it justice. But yeah, I think he deals very, very fittingly with the impartial spectator, as he calls it.
You are right. He is not a pessimist about humankind. He does not believe, like Thomas Hobbes, that we are inherently depraved. He believes we have a natural intuition to be ethical, and it's a really important position to take in the history of political philosophy, because there's a large part of political philosophy that assumes the opposite. That assumes that we are deeply depraved and that we need to be protected from each other because of that inherent depravity. And so he doesn't. He believes we have an inclination to be ethical. The reason I emphasize the external forces is complementary to that.
Yeah.
Because there is another large literature, especially in public theology and the comments of theologians on society for 2,000 years, and all the way back to Augustine in The City of God, that says even if you start off with one might say good ethical intuitions in your person, the difficulty is that the market will ruin it. Yeah. Is that the moment you get involved in the commercial world, the best you can do is not to be too badly harmed by it ethically. And that is a real additional contribution that Smith makes. So he says, both we start off with an ethical intuition, and secondly, this intuition is not harmed. In fact, it's strengthened when we participate with each other in an emerging social order like the market. So that we don't have to fear for our souls if we participate in the economy. And that really is a new position in Western, at least in Western thought, because since Augustine's City of God, there was a deep suspicion that commercial activity is harmful for your soul and very likely to undermine whatever ethical intuition you have.
It's also like covetousness, in a sense.
Exactly. All of the 7 deadly sins are to be found in the market.
Right. Oh, that's very interesting. I've never